Hello everybody, this is Charles Topley and today I'm doing something to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of me making Creepypasta videos. And I decided to honor this occasion, go back to where my entire career started, by rereading the Creepypasta, My Old Imaginary Friend. It was the very first one I ever read for my YouTube channel, and it came from DeviantArt. And if you rewatch the old video, you can see it was made on a scratch project. There was little to no background music. There was the Price is Right failure sound effect, and the audio was barely audible. Though I did add subtitles there, so if you choose to rewatch it, go ahead. The subtitles are there. And with that, my love of reading creepypastas was born. And then I made the Getting Scammed one, which was written by me. I stopped there, and I didn't intend on or have any plans on making any more after that. Eventually, I got a Reddit account, and I decided, hey, since people release creepypastas on here, and since creepypastas could be more prominently mainstream here than anywhere else, hey, why not? So I read The Best Dreams Are My Worst Nightmares, which don't expect to have any subtitles anytime soon because the original post got deleted. So if you ever look up My Best Dreams Are My Worst Nightmares creepypasta on Google, the most you'll find could be my narration. And I'll get to reading. I also recorded the audio for the original on my computer's microphone, its internal mic. And I should be done with the history of my first creepypasta. Goodbye. My Old Imaginary Friend, written by Fabby Tetrix. Every child in this world has at least one imaginary friend. They always tell stories about them and play with them when they have the chance. From furry big cuddly bears to thin furless balloon animals, giving them the goofiest names their human pals can ever think of. Adults like me find this very silly, since we were all on that age of youth where our imaginations blur out to the world. Some adults love to tell stories of our imaginary friend to our children, some just want to keep it personal. I once had an imaginary friend, yet I still regret it all since that time happened. You see, I was a loner when I was little. I never liked any of the children who wanted to play with me back when I lived in Ohio. I always told them to leave me alone, and I used to go to a specific spot where no child would ever go. It was like a private place only I can enter. It was a little cave hiding deep underneath the bushes behind a huge tree. This place is where I can express myself and have fun. Only me and my imaginary friend. Yes, I had my imaginary friend inside the little cave when I was running away from the children who wanted to play with me. He was there to comfort me and protect me from them. His name was Furbear. He had lots of white fur all over his body. His eyes weren't exposing due to the fur covering his eyes. His lips weren't shown. He didn't have a nose. He had big, large, bear-like paws with sharpless black claws and fluffy velvet paws. His feet were as big as Bigfoot's, but as fluffy as a Yeti's. His teeth were a bit sharp, but as white as snow, blending in well with his fur. What he wore was a red tie and a red mini top hat, which matches well with his personality. Gentlemanlike, polite, lovable, caring, generous, and snuggleable. Every time I entered the cave, he always waddled up to me and gave me big hugs, purring and snuggling me through all of his fur. We played all kinds of games until the dawn rises up, which is the time I had to leave Furbear. We always sang Danny Boy before I gave him a goodbye hug and left. He and I were the bestest of friends for 5 years. It almost felt like we were going to be best friends forever, no matter how old I would get. 8 years later, my parents decided that we should move to Kansas because 1, they both received new jobs as engineers. 2, most of the family members live in Kansas, and the only ones that were left in Ohio were my grandparents. But unfortunately, they both passed away, losing the fight to cancer. So we had no one else to support us here if we had any sort of problem. By that time, I completely forgot to say goodbye to Furbear. I even forgot I had an imaginary friend in the first place. Packing my bags, I felt like someone was watching me by the window, thinking of how overly stupid I am. However, as I suspected, I looked at the window, and no one was there. When I suddenly felt what seemed to be like fur stroking on my shoulder vertically, I looked over and saw nothing. Again, my mind did keep telling me that there was something in my room, something that invited itself in, yet I kept shaking it off until the 3rd strike. And by the 3rd strike, I mean I heard something this time. This time, I heard a glass shattering behind me. When I looked over, I saw a portrait of my little baby sister Aubrey on the floor. The glass had cracked between her face as if it was slicing her in half. Dang it! I mumbled as I walked towards the picture and tried to pick it up. But as odd as it sounds, touching it felt like I was touching a lit frying pan. Quickly jumping from the scorching hot flames of the portrait, I shook my hand rapidly, repeating a few vulgar words here and there, and when I looked at the palm of my hand, it wasn't red or anything around the center. But in the center, there were burn marks. But not just any burn marks. These burn marks seemed to form some little letters. However, the marks were a bit messed up, so it was hard for me to read. When I finally figured out what it said, it read Danny Boy. Holding my wrist with my good hand, tears immediately began to fall from my eyes like water drops falling down from 2 rose petals. My eyes couldn't move towards anything else. They were only focusing on the burn marks. My bottom lip began to quiver as memories began to flash back and forth, remembering my only friend, the only friend I loved and cared for, the friend who was always there for me, the friend who always gave me support for everything. When the pain flushed away, I quickly ran outside to the big tree and inside the cave. He wasn't there. Well, of course, as theory tells, when you are older, your imaginary friends go away forever and never come back. They leave you and become a new friend towards a new child. Hearing a sudden, soft hum, I felt a fluffy paw grabbing my shoulder and grasping onto it. I felt some big claws digging deep inside my shoulder, tucking its sweaty palm on my shoulder as it began to spew out a thick layer of blood. I swear I felt like tears couldn't stop running from my eyes when I looked up and saw who was grasping my shoulder. It was my old imaginary friend, Furbear. Looks like he isn't one of those imaginary friends who wants to leave their old pal. He looked a bit different than when I was little. His fur was dirty with wet dirt and dust. His teeth grew longer, sharper, and yellow. The fur that was covering his eyes are finally brushed away, but only sockets were seen. His hat was covered in dirt, and so was his messed up tie. The last thing I remember, and the last time I saw Furbear, is when he leaned against my ear and he whispered,